Well, what reaction to the latest developments in Westminster at EU headquarters? Let's go now to Brussels and correspondent Dave Keating for the latest. And Dave, Johnson says this is all a negotiating tactic. He's called on lawmakers not to chop the legs off his strategy, as he put it. Is it then having any effect in Brussels?
Well, from a Brussels perspective, Johnson was right when he said that the parliament voting to block no deal would take the legs out from under him in terms of his negotiation, because he has placed that threat of walking away with no deal as the centerpiece of his negotiating strategy. And so, of course, the whole purpose of suspending parliament was to take that out of the equation, to make the EU see, no, I can really do this. The parliament can't block me. Now, MPs opposed to no-deal Brexit have kind of gotten their act together quicker than he might have thought, and so they can head off that attempt to suspend Parliament in order to avoid this, and that's why he's using the threat of a general election. But in terms of whether Brussels is worried about this, I think it's really important to point out that everyone I have talked to here in Brussels, even when it looked like Johnson may have been successful in taking that block of a no-deal Brexit off the table. In other words, that he could actually follow through with this threat. There really wasn't movement here. Michel Barnier, the EU's chief Brexit negotiator, opined in the British media. He said nothing has changed. The EU still insists on the backstop unless Johnson can come forward with a credible alternative, which seems effectively impossible in the next couple of weeks. So even if Johnson gets his way here and is able to intimidate MPs away from casting this vote with his threat of a general election, from a Brussels perspective, it doesn't actually seem like anything changes, because the EU seems very ready to go to a no-deal scenario on October 31st, whatever happens tomorrow.
And, of course, the other scenario, Dave, is that MPs tomorrow get their way and force Boris Johnson to go back to Brussels to ask for another extension to Brexit. But is there any sign that European leaders would grant that extension?
Yes, I think so. I think, look, in whatever circumstance, whether there's a general election or not, if the UK asks for an extension, they will get it, because the EU doesn't want to be seen as the one who forces a no-deal Brexit. Even French President Emmanuel Macron, who is really seen as the most hard line on this issue, knows that is not good optics. But really, from the EU side, there are a lot of people here in Brussels who just really want a no-deal Brexit at this point, who are kind of tired of all of this, are very aware that the new commission starts office on the 1st of November, and they want to get on with their business here. So I don't think there's any risk that the EU would object to that request for an extension, whoever requests it, whether it's Johnson or maybe he has maybe after a general election, Jeremy Corbyn becomes prime minister and comes here to Brussels on the 18th of October and asks for that extension. But the common wisdom here in Brussels is that whoever asks for it and however long it's for, they will grant it, because the EU does not want to be seen as the one throwing the UK into a chaotic no-deal scenario.
And are all the 27 EU member states on the same page when it comes to that, or are any cracks beginning to show?
We've really seen no sign of disunity there, at least in terms of throwing the backstop under the bus. No country has said that they might get rid of the backstop. They might support getting rid of the backstop without any credible alternative. And again, as I say, France is the most hostile to the idea of extending Brexit, but everything I've heard says even France, even Emmanuel Macron, would not veto a request to extend the Brexit deadline.
Dave, thank you very much indeed. Dave Keating there in Brussels.